Good morning. Today I want to talk about foundations. Now, I do feel very qualified talking about this because I'm a bricklayer by trade. I served my time the hard way as in the building sites. Well, foundations are very important. I've seen me going to sites in the middle of just after Christmas actually, the day after Boxing Day, and on the side of a mountain, and it's cold and snowy, and the jumping into a trench and laying these big blocks. See, the foundations are so important that you've got to. It's hard to do. You're usually reaching over and you're 2 foot in a trench, and your legs and your knees is covered with mud. But you drop these blocks in, and the foundations are so important. If you're doing anything, it's what you build, but the foundations is very, very important because that's where the solid ground is. So I want to turn to Matthew 7, and there's also a wee bit in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And I hope this is a blessing to you. I'm talking to believers today that they'll make sure they know what they're going to build on after you give your life to Christ. Okay, so Matthew 7, verse 24, Jesus talks about this parable. A couple of words here that mean a lot, and may they register hard in your head today. So Matthew 7, verse 24, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them. So that's very important. When you give your life to the Lord, you've got to move on, you've got to act. You can't sit still, you can't stand and get fed all the time. You've got to act upon what you hear and live it, okay? So we'll go, acts upon them, he must be like a sensible man who builds his house on a rock. The rain fell and the rivers rose and the winds blew and pounded that house, yet it didn't collapse because of its foundations was on a rock. So foundations are so important, and the only foundations is Jesus Christ. Not what a man says or a belief in something else, but there's only one foundation, and that's Jesus Christ. The rest is sand, okay? Yet it didn't collapse because the foundation was on a rock. But anyone who hears these words of mine and doesn't act on them will be like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. So you have two things there. When you give your life to Christ, you have to act upon it. And we're talking here now about the person who hears the word and doesn't act upon it. Will be like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. The rain fell and the rivers rose and the winds blew, pounded that house, and it collapsed. And great was the collapse. You don't want that. You want to act upon what you believe. Now the other wee scriptures that seem to tie into this quite a lot is in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, where you get Paul talking here. And he's saying that making sure that you don't be following men that or different fellowships and all this and that, but you follow Christ, and he's the priority in your life. So Paul talks here in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, and we'll go to verse 10. Now read the verses beforehand, which are very important too, but we'll move here to 10 today. Therefore, to God's grace that was given to me, I laid a foundation as a skilled master builder, and another builds on it. But each one must first be careful how he builds. This is a verse now. For no one can lay any other foundation that has already been laid down. Here it comes. That foundation is Jesus Christ. Not what men say or different leaders say. You base everything on what Jesus says. And be careful not to follow different preacher boys, but follow Christ. Yes, listen to them, but examine it through the word all the time. It's got to be following Christ. This foundation is Jesus Christ. Look, and if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, straw, each man's work will be obvious, for the day will disclose it. So you have a sense of value there. If it's sand and a straw, bye-bye when the storm comes. Because it will be revealed by fire, and fire will test the quality of each man's work. If anyone builds that he has built survives, he will receive a reward. So Christ wants you to follow him, and when we go to the glory, you'll be rewarded for what you've done as a Christian. But I must understand this, it's not by works you get saved, it's by the cross, and then you're meant to act upon what you've heard then. Okay. If anyone's work is burnt up, he will be lost, yet will be saved. Yet it will be like escaping through fire. So may the Lord bless you today. I'm going to finish there on verse 15, but it's very important to say Christ is the foundation, Christ is the only foundation, and be careful how you build upon it. Bye.